Mark Bonetti,
Here.
Gerald Wolfgang,
Here.
Kevin McCabe,
Here.
William Ross,
Here.
Robert Cliff,
Here.
Clifford Scott,
Here.
Mary Lynn Candela, and Scott Bridges are excused.
Thank you. Will you please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please see over you.
5.0, just pass over introduction. You guys sorry about that.
Sue Barone, agency staff.
Joint Dudley, agency staff. Mark
Yeah.
Shear.
Andrew.
Mark Shear, investigative post.
Terry Crusoe, agency staff.
Mark Gabriel, agency counsel. Yeah, it's understood. It's a bit.
5.0, approval of the meeting minutes from July 14th.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that would be the regular NCIDA, MDCC, and ADC of July 14th. Certainly, I found it in order, but if there's any additions or deletions, please bring it up at this time. Is there any additions or deletions to the July 14th minutes of this organization? If not, I make a motion to move, and I'm looking for a second.
You got it.
Second, Mr. Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Chairman?
Motion carries. Thank you. 6.0, finance and audit reports. Kevin?
Found the agency payables July report to be in order, make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
6.2, budget variance report, found that to be in order. July 31st, make a motion to approve.
Again, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 7.0, unfinished business, ultimate physique, OCR plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're asking the board today to approve two agreements. One agreement is between the county and the NCDC, and then the next agreement is between the NCDC and the company. So a little bit of background, we have an agreement with, the NCDC has an agreement with the county to apply for OCR funds to the New York State Office of Community Renewal, which we pretty regularly do. And in this case, we did for the benefit of Ultimate Physique. So these grant agreements are just really allowing or solidifying that partnership between the county and NCDC, and then NCDC with the company. And following this, the board will be seeing in the future, we have a couple other grant requests submitted to the state, one for a micro enterprise fund, one for another company, and one for a small business fund through the state. So you'll be seeing more of these requests in the future.
Just as a background, really quick, I know it looks as though it's a tier. It is, because the county itself, the state cannot enter into a direct contract with the company. And that's what we're basically the middleman on this on behalf of the county as pursuant to our agreement with the county. So the county would enter into the agreement through us with the state under certain obligations. We would then enter into an agreement with the company where that company would assume all those obligations as well as agree to indemnify us.
So we'll pass.
We are basically a pass-through entity to get these state funds to the company.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We need a motion for. Okay. Second, Mr. Cliff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At 7.1.2, need a motion for that agreement. Okay. And second. Mr. Cliff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.2, Niagara, 334 Niagara Street.
There's an email request within your packet. Mark, do you want to address this?
Yes, it's nothing substantial. Again, this is part of the Cataract grant that is outstanding for 324 Niagara Street LLC. They're moving forward and they're going right now in the process of getting financing through their bank. The bank, because of COVID, is going to be pushed off a few months. And the company is requesting basically two things. The first is that the grant completion date be extended through
June 1st, 2023.
June 1st, 2023. And then the second part of the request is the approval of collateral assignment of grants. Well, basically this is, and it's built into our grant agreement that they can assign the rights to the grant funds. If you recall, our grants work as a reimbursable grant that we will not give a dime to any company unless the project is completed. Certificate of occupancy for that particular project is issued, and they provide us with the background expenses as well as a letter from a certified public accountant or firm showing that it was done for those purposes. So having said that, they're going through their financing, and the bank has requested the assignment of those grant funds as part of their financing package. That is nothing which really bothers us because we can, as long as the project is done, that the expenditures were made, we would then provide that money to the company, who would then probably have to pay their debt. Here, the bank is saying, as part of this, when your project is completed, we want that right to get those monies back as part of our financing package. So it really has very little to do or affects our agency or the project itself. The project will go forward, and just to reiterate, notwithstanding any approval of any assignment, the bottom line is that unless the project is completed and certificate occupancies are issued, we're not giving them a dime anyway. So that's the second part. So we'd be looking for two separate motions or two separate resolutions, one on the extension date and the other one on the consent to the collateral assignment.
On the assignment, are we paying them or does the company?
What ended up happening is let's say the amount is, I believe in this case, $155,000. At the end of the project, we would have the right, we would pay the company normally. They're asking us, and the company has requested us, that at the end of the project, when all the expenses are done and they're eligible to receive these monies, that we actually pay them to the bank to offset their debt.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I need a motion for the extension of the grant. So moved. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we also need an approval of the collateral assignment of the grant. Mr. Cliff? And Mr. Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. New business. 8.1, Griffin Pub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The former vacant Maloney's Market on Lockport Street, 200 Lockport Street, in the village of Youngstown, was sold to EW Cass Holdings Company for the purpose of establishing a brewing operation. The site will primarily be a manufacturing location to brew beer for the Griffin Pub's various retail establishments and direct sales to customers. The project will be employing a brewing staff and delivery personnel. A small portion, less than 30%, will be a retail dining component. And Mr. Webster is here today to answer any questions the board may have.
Can you tell us about the project?
Sure. Me and my business partner purchased the old Maloney store and started basically moving into creating a brewing facility there. It'll be a 10-barrel brewing facility. We started moving on this pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, so we got knocked a little bit backwards. Started building a small staff, or at least talking to some people about perhaps brewing and this, that, and the other, and wanted basically brew to retail in grocery stores, other bars, some of our own restaurants and such. I don't know what else I can say.
Question?
So no employees, 20?
New employees, I believe that's about the number we're looking at, as high as 26. I think that would probably be in the 26, 28 range, depending on the demand for the beer, how we turn cycles, how we actually pitch beer and such.
And that's full-time, correct?
Those would be full-time, yes.
We were conservative on the application.
Any other question?
How's the landscape, the beer landscape in your
So I think, well, right now in Niagara County, I think you just have Brickyard Brewing, and you have Woodcock Brothers, who has 2 facilities. We love beer. I don't know if you're familiar with our restaurant, so we love draft beer, and that market is still pretty good. And I just think that need for that area is going to be fantastic, because they don't really have much going on there. I know there's plans to put in a big hotel for Rich Brewer, and there's some other retail establishments that are actually opening up in Youngstown as well. So I think you're seeing a small revitalization there, and everybody's kind of anticipating us opening down there to try and bring some traffic in from outside areas. Because Lewiston does so well. We have a restaurant in Lewiston, and Lewiston is always packed, and people love Lewiston, but we're giving those people that extra excuse to go down the road. And ever since they stopped doing the regatta in Youngstown, there hasn't been this huge influx of tourist traffic there. There's just not enough to do. So hopefully this fills a void, fills a need, and gets some people down there. That's our goal.
I guess for retail
Just won't be just with draft beer, so
What's that? Yeah, so we are currently, we want to put in a canning line. The facility, I don't know, to put in a full-time running canning line would actually function the way we would like it to. So I'm actually looking at buying mobile canning, not the services, but I want to buy a mobile canning line because they're smaller and they're more condensed. So we would be able to can, and only using a 10-barrel facility, we couldn't fit anything bigger. We looked at doing something bigger. Our roof height is only 14.2, which restricts the sizing of a lot of that equipment. So we actually bought a direct fire system. That system, we could fit 20-barrel tanks, which is basically double brew. And then the canning line for that would be adequate if we bought a system like that. Because I don't think we'd be brewing, so if we had like a 30-barrel system, like a lot of guys do with 60 barrels, I don't think you could ever pull that off with a mobile canning line. And this way, if we have that, we can move it out of the way just to try and conserve some of the space.
The costs are gonna be about a little under $1 million.
Yes. The brewing system alone is upwards right now, over 300, maybe closer to 350, and that's not for all of the components of it. That's not with keg washing systems and canning lines and such like that. So
Are you looking for any other incentives besides what you're planning for here?
we have discussed it. It's expressed to Andrea and Sue. I've never borrowed money for anything or ever applied for any grants or anything. Everything we've done has been self-funded. So when it comes to basically employing, to be honest, we are a little gun shy with the economic climate and what's happening with COVID and if there's going to be more shutdowns and what the future is going to bring. So we actually did consider applying for some other incentives as well. I am working with Andrea on that. I spoke with a gentleman named Chuck Bell. I don't know if you gentlemen are familiar with him. But we have filled out or started filling out another application as well. But I don't know how we're going to handle that. We're still, once upon a time, we had moved forward with Chuck. We were going to apply for a lot of other incentives. And then, like I said, when COVID hit, I was actually in school learning how to brew. I don't want to do anything unless I know how the processes are done. So in the meanwhile, I was taking night school brewing classes. COVID hit, that got canceled. The project was put on hold because nobody knew what was going to happen in the future. So then once everything started to clear, we started making some headway moving forward with those projects.
That should be ample parking there.
We don't have, so if you're familiar with
Yeah,
law,
I'm familiar with the store, when it was the grocery store and then when it was Maloney, things like that. But you do have enough parking.
yeah, we own half that lot.
Okay.
And the retail, the restaurant component there will be a small entity on the other side. So we're gonna split the building in half, basically. Half of it will be brewing, and basically the other half will host some of the restaurant component, a smaller space in the front. But our goal more for that is people walking in purchasing beer and then walking out. You know, so we will have a small section there. We bought some automated cooking equipment and such. Like I said, and we're pretty much trying to utilize to be as green as possible. So when you're brewing that much beer, you're still creating a bunch of stuffed grain. And we're trying to figure out solutions on how to utilize that. Some of it will get back to farmers, because I know some of the farmers will come in and grab that stuff. But we're looking at what we can do with that to basically even facilitate all of our other restaurants. So right now, just to give you a quick run through of what we do, we have 4 restaurants currently open. One of them is in Lewiston. Lewiston works as our prep kitchen. So that's our commissary. We prepare all of our foods, all of our sauces, everything out of that location. And then we have drivers that basically take that to all of the other locations for consistency purposing and such like that. So this, for us, we would almost move that prep kitchen there in the back to utilize some of that grain. That's actually an extension of perhaps what we're doing with the beer. So we'll see. I mean, right now we have a really solid plan of how we're going to move forward for some of this stuff. Like I said, we are a little gun shy to pull the trigger on certain things just because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID as we see new variants coming in and places and talks of more shutdowns. And, you know, it is scary at some point to be in business to invest that kind of funds, especially for guys like us that are pretty much primarily self-funded, and then worry about what's going to happen in the future. So,
You know, a sidebar question, doesn't have too much to do with this. Do you have any connections with the brewery on South Transit Road before they're moving into Erie County?
which brewery?
That beer from?
Is that the name of it? Just before you, South Transit Road, just before you cross into the area?
No connection.
No, I mean, I just was curious.
Other than I sell their beer. So we try to we try to support all the local breweries. And some of their beer is better than others. But even though we look at it, go local right now is so huge. And there's a lot of guys that'll come in, even tourists, all they want is local. So seeing that need, you know, even for what we're gonna do, primarily filling voids in our own restaurants, we will still leave some of our draft lines, canning lines and stuff like that for local beers. Because it's such a great thing when people come in and say, hey, what's local? You know, and looking at the Niagara County region and what's going on with brewing, and looking at what's happening in Erie County, and or even we've been in Florida. There's a brewery. You could throw a stone and hit a brewery somewhere down there. You know, they're everywhere. Same in California. So the market is really great, and it hasn't really grown in this area in Niagara County. And we've always wanted to own a brewery. It's always been on our agenda. Opening it in Youngstown was something that we just kind of stumbled on. So hopefully, you know, this will work through the way we want it to.
Who does all the testing?
This guy, not the beer guy. There we go.
I mean, I'd be like,
What is the time frame on beer? If COVID-19 doesn't interfere with what's your time frame?
So right now, and I don't think that would affect much. The brewing system, no matter what you do, is all built to order. So you're looking at least 6 months before we'd actually see a brew house and or any of that. So that is already in the works. We have a lot of plans on doing some work inside and to get that moving. Besides put water filtration systems in, we could be brewing beer in as early as 8 months. And we could be opening the facility to public per se in that 8 month to a year range. So that's where I think we're pretty much trying to get open before next summer would be our goal if we don't hit too many hiccups. The beauty is the building is kind of a raw space. So it was a huge grocery and it had 3 big coolers in the back, which serve our functions really well because we don't have to build new coolers. We just had to clear the building, which was actually a lot of work. I mean, you're talking about a grocery store that's been there since the 50s. And, you know, getting all that equipment out of there and all those cooler shelves was kind of a nightmare. But we're well on our way. That's clear. I have folks coming in to get all of the interior work done. The exterior work that we're going to do in the building is secondary to us. Right now, our main function is getting beer in and start producing for manufacturing purposes so that we can get some income back rolling from this project.
How your products not locally to correct farmers?
We don't know if we're going to apply for a farmhouse brewing license the guy, so I'm using consultant. The consultant I'm using is, was an instructor at ECC. He was also an instructor at Trocaire College. So he said to me that it's probably best for us not to commit to doing farmhouse brewing right now, simply because the materials aren't there right now. So buying from New York, because of labor shortages and or whatever, the product isn't there. Now, he works for a competitor's brewery, which I don't want to list his name only because he's afraid that if somebody finds out he might lose his job. But his assertion is that he doesn't think right now that the local farmers in New York can supply the demand that most brewers are needing at the moment. So guys who apply for farmhouse brewing were buying outside. And once upon a time, it was, you had to prove, I think it was over 50% of your product purchase had to be from New York State farmers. They had to lower that number because they couldn't meet the demand. So I don't know if it's been raised again or lowered again, but that was always the thing. So what he has basically told me is there's times where they can't purchase because they're just not there, or otherwise they'll lose their status and they'd have to reapply for different statuses. So it's a little nerve-wracking, and we haven't applied for the licensing yet. And one of the reasons my attorney and I are trying to figure out the schematic of how retail licensing works for what the needs are to provide. Because there's about 3 or 4 licenses associated with that. One of which I believe is if we open up a brewing facility, we can only open 5 restaurant facilities to accompany that. If you open up a 6th, you need to open another restaurant. And that's New York. There's nothing, or not, I'm sorry, open up another brewery, right? Which our anticipations were always growth, just keep reinvesting. All the money we make, we reinvest into new projects. So looking at maybe saying, hey, we're gonna have to open another brewery is a little bit scary, but not the end of the world, so.
Any other questions?
You mentioned licensing. What are the licensing that's necessary to get that in operation?
So the state liquor authority has multiple licenses. I believe they have like a brew pub license where you're just brewing for your own pub. There's another license, which is, it pretty much all relates, from what I understand, to the amount of beer you're producing. So right now, saying that we're going to produce 2,000 barrels or less puts us in one certain category for licensing. And then when you're talking about farmhouse brewing, that's a totally separate license in and of itself, because the state wants you to buy actually to support, obviously, New York farmers, which we will do. We just don't know if they'll be able to meet our demand. So if we have to stem outside, we would. But that's a whole nother schematic. So I believe there's 3 licenses that we're looking at currently, one of which is farmhouse brewing, one of which is not just brewing for local, but brewing for our 5 restaurants. Like I said, I believe that's just called a brew house license, and then there's bigger licenses that go up and we start talking about bigger systems and how much beer you're producing.
Any other?
Is your intention to be open, when I say open, I'm talking about the manufacturing of the beer. Is that a 24-hour type operation, or is it set on certain time frame?
So right now, my brewer believes that we'll be brewing 5 days a week. So just to give you a quick run through, like I said, I can explain some of the system. So with a 10-barrel system, every time you produce beer, you're producing about 10 barrels. Then they have these storage tanks that beer goes into. So we're basically buying 5 vessels currently. 3 of those vessels will be 10-barrel systems. So that would be simply brewing one cycle, which then goes into one of the vessels. The 20 barrels are double cycle projects. So depending on what kind of brew you're making, what kind of beer you're making. So if you're making a stout per se, just to give you a quick rundown, there's a company called Mortalis, upstate New York. They brew beer. They'll run a 30-hour boil cycle to basically extract whenever they're making really dark beers, this, that, and the other. So they'll brew, because their system was so small, they'd have to triple brew. They have guys that are working 3 days straight. So they would have people all night. I don't know if that's where we will be, and I can't say for sure we'll be brewing at that level. As of right now, I do not believe I'll have people working all those hours, but I believe there will be some time that we are open for more than a 24-hour cycle.
Thank you.
We need a motion for the preliminary resolution. And second,
Second.
Mr. Ross, all in favor?
Aye.
King,
Yes.
Mr. McKay,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Cliff,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Krempa,
Yes.
Mr. Omesi.
Yes. Thank you. 8.1, authorized public hearing. Do we have any for that? Not yet. Okay. The motion for the public hearing. Mr. Clerk?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Okay, Council, Gabriel?
Yes, thank you. I do have one item. I previously mentioned the Red Star LLC. We currently have a grant, cataract grant that has been approved for Red Star, which is part of the Niagara Club. They have completed a portion only of what it is, so their grant would be proportionate size. If they want to come back for the remainder of their grant amount, they'd have to reapply and go through us again. But in the meantime, they're going to be doing it. That included the work done on Spot Coffee and some of the other items. That grant expires here in August. I've been working with them to get their expenses, because as you know, you need to provide the proof of the expenditures for this along with the certification. I anticipate that being done very quickly, and it's very soon. But all I want to do, just to avoid any issues or timing, is get board approval to extend their time to provide us that documentation to the end of the month. If there's any issue, I don't think there'd be an issue. So with that direction, yeah, it could be a voice vote, but yes.
Motion? Okay, Mr. Scott? All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Just Gabriel, the
Yes, sir.
item we have needed for San Marino, that is for a beer operation, isn't it? So,
What is Severino's?
Yeah.
I believe that, you mean the one in downtown? I believe it is.
Yes, it was formerly the community beer project, but that did not work out, so they're seeking another brewer.
the one we had in agreement with,
Didn't have,
but they're still looking for it,
Yeah.
and that's their intention.
yes.
Right. Any other business? All right, we'll make a motion that we return. Our next meeting is February 8th at 9 a.m. right here. Do we have a motion?
So I have an announcement.
Mr. Krempa, Mr. Cliff, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Everyone. Hopefully,
I found it. That's how we left it for Friday.
what's that?
And my car flashes on until 11:45. Severe thunderstorm. That's where you are.
Yeah, you have a great day. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he was not taking those. Yeah, but maybe, you know.
No, I didn't even think about it.
It's something.
Yeah.
You don't want me to finish my sentence? So we're gonna check.
So what else?
Okay. I know.
Okay.
No, I get it. I thought it was 8 o'clock meeting was late. And then we went to conference.